As if flooding wasn't bad in America, check out Australia. Here we go. Check Australia out. This is Australia now. And they say there's no climate change? Huh. Huh. Outside turn red.
Thunderstorms and dust storms are wreaking havoc in southwest Queensland. A dust storm swept southwest Queensland overnight, turning the sky red and leaving a thick layer of dust on the small town. Last night, gusts of wind at a speed of 93 kilometers per hour swept through the regional city of Targaminda, carrying with them giant clouds of earthy red dust. The city is home to just 270 people who have begun a massive cleanup today to remove sand from their homes and property. Meteorologist James Thompson said the dust formed about 100 kilometers from land in the far west of the state and spread across the sky due to strong winds. There was a gutter in the area yesterday, and it did bring in those fierce winds that were associated with these storms, he said. Despite the apocalyptic appearance, dust storms are not uncommon in Australia and often occur in summer and spring in particularly arid conditions. As the dust settled on Targamine, the livestock complex near Goondiwindi coped with the worst of yet another storm. A devastating wind destroyed several canopies, and residents described conditions similar to tornadoes, with sheets of metal and debris scattered over several kilometers.
South Africa now. South Africa. Despite the fact that South Africa is known for its racism, nature take over. You can't mess with nature. Don't care how racist you are, man. Nature take over. Nature do take over.
On the Garden Route were flooded after heavy rains. The community urged residents to stay at home. Heavy rains caused severe flooding in the streets, the report said. The footage posted on social media shows homes and vehicles underwater as a result of a flash flood. Georgia's streets, shops, and houses were flooded after a heavy early morning downpour today. Georgia fell 79 millimeters of rainfall. Georgia's community has asked residents on their Facebook page to stay at home if possible.
Here we go again, folks. Here we go again.
Temperatures and sea levels are rising all over the world. Low-lying coastal cities are already dealing with disastrous floods and are desperately trying to find innovative ways to combat rising sea levels. While some cities are sinking because of the rising sea levels, others are sinking due to the excessive groundwater pumping that generates pressure and volume change, causing the surface of a city to sink. Without drastic action, it could happen at any time and anywhere, even in your city. Welcome to Earthbound, where we explore topics impacts on cities, countries, and Earth in general. Before we begin, help us out by clicking that like button. It only takes a second and we'd really appreciate it. Now, here are 10 sinking cities that will soon be underwater. Number 10, Miami, USA. While the whole United States East Coast is in grave danger, Miami is in particular extremely vulnerable to rising sea levels. Miami sea levels are rising faster than in many parts of the world due to ocean currents and the city's low ground location, causing flooding, contaminated drinking water, and significant damages to buildings and roadways. The rising tide has become an inevitable element of life in Miami, increasing at a rate of approximately 1 inch every 3 years. Scientists are even predicting that the sea level will rise at a faster rate in the next 15 years, adding another 6 inches, definitely not so good for Miami. Floodwaters in Miami rise from storm drains, making it impossible to maneuver without coming into contact with the water, which is combined with sewage and whatever else it picks up along the way. Of course, this means that vast portions of the city will eventually become permanently uninhabitable pretty soon. The rest of the United States should pay close attention to how Miami deals with its sea level epidemic unless it wants to lose a major part of its economy. Number 9, Alexandria, Egypt. The great city of Alexandria is built on low-lying land, which you will find is a common feature for most of the cities on this list, since we've already established that sea levels are expected to increase by as much as 2 feet by 2050. This puts major areas of the Egyptian city at risk for flooding because of upstream dams that impede silt replenishment and natural gas extraction. The land on which Alexandria is built on, as well as the neighboring Nile Delta, is actually sinking at a similar rate as the sea is rising. Alexandria, Egypt's second city, is surrounded on 3 sides by the Mediterranean Sea and backs up to a lake, making it even more vulnerable to rising sea levels. Residents housed in low-lying districts, some even claiming that the fortifications installed by the local government really haven't had much of a difference. Until 1993, according to Egypt's Ministry of Water Resources and Irrigation, the sea level rose by an average of 1.8 millimeters each year. Over the next 2 decades, that number increased to 2.1 millimeters per year, and since 2012, it has sharply risen to 3.2 millimeters per year. We wouldn't want another Egyptian city underwater, so let's all make sure to do our part to avoid this scenario. Number 8, Ho Chi Minh, Vietnam. According to a report by the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, sections of Vietnam's largest metropolis might be submerged by 2050. The city has been sinking at a rate of up to 80 millimeters every year due to the rapid population increase the city has seen in the last 20 years. Climate change and rising sea levels only further exacerbate the situation. Extreme weather is also becoming increasingly common in the city of roughly 9 million citizens, but the infrastructure to control flooding has not kept up. The water delivery system is one such infrastructure that has failed to keep up with the city's rapid growth. As a result, many residents and businesses have turned to extract groundwater extraction while waiting for clean piped water. Unfortunately, excessive groundwater extraction can result in subsurface cavities collapsing, causing the soil on top to sink, further submerging the entire city. Luckily, discussions around the situation are currently underway, with the city's government even proposing to build a massive dike in response. Number 7, New Orleans, USA. Another American city, the sinking soils of New Orleans are caused by both human and environmental forces. Depending on how the measurement is done, approximately only half of the greater New Orleans is above sea level. It used to be completely above sea level until engineers in the 1900s built a drainage system with hopes of correcting the rising sea levels. Instead, they mistakenly ended up sinking half of the city to below sea level. You see, before people arrive in the area, the Mississippi River regularly deposited silt along the area's shoreline. As part of the drainage system, levees were built to prevent the natural buildup from occurring, which ended up starving the land of these natural sediments, removing water from the soil and creating air pockets, ultimately causing the entire area to be unstable. This caused the rapid sinking of the wetlands of New Orleans, and by the 1930s, only a few decades after the system was built, the entire third of the city had sunk below sea level. Number 6, Bangkok, Thailand. Flooding is a first. Number 4, Houston, USA. Houston, we have a problem. Due to the heavy groundwater pumping, parts of the city of Houston are sinking at a rate of 2 inches per year. The city depends heavily on aquifers, which are porous rock bodies that serve as natural filters to provide water to households, businesses, and farms. Overpumping can cause these aquifers to become depleted, causing the land to compress and sink. The overall Houston-Galveston region is one of the largest areas of subsidence in the United States. The city had experienced nearly 10 feet of subsidence that covered an area of nearly 32,000 square miles by 1979. In recent years, infrastructure destruction, flooding, and the loss of wetland ecosystems have all increased, leading to a visible altering of low-lying coastal regions. As Houston sinks, the more vulnerable it becomes to increasingly regular disasters like Hurricane Harvey, which destroyed nearly 135,000 homes and forced 30,000 people to flee their homes. Number 3, Lagos, Nigeria. The city of Lagos, Italy. If you're familiar with Venice, you probably already know of the Acqua Alta, or high water, which occurs many times a year when the tides are high. Because of that, Venice is sinking at a rate of 0.8 inches per year. That city has been said to have been sinking for several years now, but a recent study indicates it could be totally submerged sooner than expected. According to a new climate change report, Venice will be underwater by 2100 if global warming continues unabated. Plate tectonics is the primary cause of Venice's sinking. The historical city lies on top of the Adriatic plate, which is being subducted by the Apennines Mountains, which basically means the mountains are eating the region up. In 2003, Italy began construction on a flood barrier of 78 gates spanning its 3 inlets. It was named Mose. The barrier was meant to be finished in 2011, but was later to be finished sometime this year. The underwater barriers have been built to minimize the amount of water entering the lagoon in order to protect them and avoid further erosion. The system will be fully operational by the autumn of 2021, following a trial period which began in October 2020. You're nearly at the end of our video. Before we continue, make sure you're started. Indonesia, soon to overtake Tokyo as the world's most populated metropolis. This rapidly growing city is expected to be totally submerged by 2050. Prone to flooding, Jakarta is sinking at a rate of up to 10 centimeters per year, making it the world's fastest sinking city. The ground has fallen 2.5 meters in 10 years in portions of North Jakarta, which are particularly vulnerable to flooding. Because of the rising sea levels and the restriction of water access, the city's limited water supply, the majority of its population must rely on groundwater extraction for drinking and commercial purposes. When the Dutch arrived in Indonesia in the 1600s and created what is now Jakarta, they divided the city.
If you didn't know, now you know. All right, folks. Peace out. My love.